There we go. Dedicated to the only serious choice, the gospel of Jesus Christ, music and the spoken word. You're watching Light Source Victory Television Live. Me, your host, Jason McCauley. Oh, wait, I went and turned the mic on. No sound. Battery dead. Dead up. This is why you're supposed to do a sound check before you get on the air. Check mic 1, 2. It worked this morning. Checked everything but the sound. No sound. No battery. Dead. Dead battery. That's why you're going to love live broadcasting. It's always fun. So I had to jump up, run across the room to the other side of the studio, grab another mic that I knew the battery was good, and drop that battery in here and get underway. We continue the journey into the life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word of the Most High God. On your screen, that's where we were when we ended up last. So this is where we will start today. All right. For the next 55 minutes or so, as we continue our journey into the life-changing, life-giving, everlasting word of the Most High God, as the songwriter pens the words, handwriting on the wall, Silver Sergeant of Hartford, Connecticut fame. All right, so handwriting is definitely on the wall. We are in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. We're going to finish this up today, 11 and 12. So grab your pencil, paper, Bible, all the things necessary in order to take the journey as we press our way on through the life-changing word here. Let me get my sound together. Wow, I don't believe I didn't do a sound check. Wow. It's unacceptable. Unacceptable. But now, if this was a client, it would really be bad. You know, you're live, go, and there's no sound. It happens. It happens. Hey, what can we say? All right. I'm in the studio working, actually. I'm doing, my studio is unacceptable to me. It's kind of messy. And I want to put some stuff in some cabinets. So I'll get a cabinet. I'm going to put it right over there. And for the last 8 hours, I've been processing, like, what to do with this cabinet. And so I got stuff all over the place. And, I started getting ready for the program at 9:30. I had 10 solid minutes. And, I'm walking around the house doing stuff, and the alarm goes off, ready to start the program alarm, and just caught off guard. If I was staff, I'd fire me. That's the one nice thing about working for yourself. You can't fire yourself and get work done. So what I wind up doing is put myself on leave or suspension. I suspend myself for any amount. It doesn't really matter the amount of time. It could be a 2-minute suspension, a 4-day suspension. Whatever the suspension is, it's waived. It's waived so that I can continue to do the work that's necessary. So I suspend myself for 1 day, but I will waive that suspension so that I get the job done. But if that was somebody working for me, I'd have no choice but to let them go because they didn't follow proper procedure. You remember that movie, I'm My Own Grandpa? Like you're your own boss. I don't know which. I don't think that's a good thing sometimes to be your own boss, unless you're willing to put yourself in hard check. All right, that's enough of that. Okay, Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 1 at the top of your screen, reading out of the New Living Translation. Send your grain across the seas, and in time profits will flow back to you. But divide your investments among many places, for you don't know what risks might lie ahead. That's a pretty one. That's a pretty good one right there. Right? I mean, that's just practical. Diversify your investments. If you put all your investments, if you put all your eggs in one basket and you set your basket out to sea, if the ship fails, then everything you have goes down. right? But if you send your eggs, a different egg on every ship, the chances of all the ships failing, the chances of all of the ships sinking is diminished greatly. All right. Now, all of them should reach their destination. But if everything you have is on that one ship, you're in trouble. All right. But you have to be willing at least to invest. You have to be willing to take the risk. All right. Life is full of risks. All right. There's the old adage, trust is easy. It's knowing who to trust that's difficult. That's where the difficulty comes in. So trust is easy. Knowing who to trust, that's where the challenge comes. All right. So there's risk involved in everything. And as we have been studying Ecclesiastes, the whole purpose of this is to lay out that everything ultimately is vanity and vexation of spirit. The whole purpose and duty of man is to keep God commandments, right? Fear the Lord and keep his commandments. Fear God, keep his commandments. Serve God, keep his commandments. And so if you want real sustained fulfillment in life, do that which is pleasing to the Lord. Because everything else will fail. All right? There's zero risk in trusting God. Zero. Every other thing you do, there's risk. All right? God will not fail you. The righteous are not forsaken. Right? The seed of the righteous don't beg bread. God enters into every situation to work his perfect will. Find yourself a person of faith, and they will testify to you through thick and thin. God has always provided. He's always come through. He's always ordered their footsteps. So there's no risk. No risk. God will not fail you. People will fail you. Right? Opportunities to make money will fail you. Even investing in yourself sometimes doesn't pay off like you would have hoped that it would. All right, so God doesn't fail. He doesn't fail. When clouds are heavy, the rains come down. Well, we see that happening right now across the country with the massive rainfall or precipitation in the Midwest. A lot of snow. Most of the East Coast got a lot of rain, followed by this big cold snap that's here. When the clouds are heavy, right? When clouds are heavy, the rains come down. Whether a tree falls north or south, it stays where it falls. It's not that deep. Right? You don't have any control over that. None. And sometimes rain comes down heavy, real heavy, floods. I was watching the news earlier today, and it was, Connecticut news, Channel 30, Channel 3. I was floating back and forth between the two. As soon as one gets good, they go south. They start off being different, and then they start winding up being like the competition they're trying to be better than. And then, and it goes back and forth between Channel 3, Channel 30. I find Fox 61 is more stable, more consistent across the board. But that's just me. They were covering this weather event like it had never rained before. It's a lot of rain, yeah, but I mean, it rains a lot sometimes. Clouds are heavy, it rains. This is not like some odd thing. You know, the first snow we get is going to be a big thing. They're gonna have reporters out on the corners. It's snowing. Already there's an inch on the ground. Well, the projected amount of snowfall is going to be quite high, and it just every year, as though it's never snow. These things are out of your control. It's going to snow. It's going to snow. It's going to rain. It's going to rain. Trees blow over with the heavy winds because of the large amounts of rain. You can't control that. They showed cars where the trees had fallen over on people's cars. They fell over on the side of somebody's house and stuff. And if they'd have only known that the tree was going to fall south rather than north, or north rather than south, they'd have cut the tree down yesterday. Guaranteed, they would have cut the tree down to prevent it from destroying their car or their house. But they don't know, do they? There's no way to know. No way to know. Farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. Just as you can't understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, in theory, the safest space on earth. It's interesting that so many people want safe spaces to have conversations and to feel like it's a welcoming place for them to, feel being whoever they are. Yet the safest space on earth is one that seemingly is under attack to remove the occupant from it. I'm just saying. Just as you can't understand the path of the wind or the mystery of a tiny baby growing in its mother's womb, so you cannot understand the activity of God who does all things. Right? The Bible tells us that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called, right? The more accurate translation would be God enters into every situation to work his perfect will. He doesn't cause things bad to happen. When bad things happen, he enters into those situations to work out of it his perfect will. So if a tree fell over and crushed your car, and you were a person of faith, and you're trusting in the Lord, and you love the Lord, you have a relationship with him, right? The steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. The righteous are not forsaken, their seed not begging bread. All right. If you have a relationship with him, he enters into the situation. He works his perfect will. God has not let you down because something bad happened. God will enter into that situation and work his will. All right. God won't disappoint you. I'm here to he won't disappoint you. You may not get what you want. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Very hard pill. Because sometimes things happen and we don't understand. We don't understand why. Particularly if it's a loss of a loved one. We just don't. We don't understand. And the loss is personal to us. So we feel we've been wronged many times. And then the one we blame for the wrong is the one who we, by virtue of blaming God, understand the awesome supreme power of God. So we're mad because God didn't let a thing happen the way we wanted it to happen. Right? Or didn't stop something from happening that we feel he should stop. Yet we ourselves do things that we wish we hadn't done. We do things to people that we know we should not have done. But we expect God to always do what we want. God's activities are a mystery to us. And by the way, just like you feel you don't have to explain yourself to other people, guess who doesn't have to explain themselves to you? God. I'm just saying, this is just some food for thought. Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon, for you don't know if profit will come from one activity or the other, maybe both. That's good, isn't it? That's good. You've heard the adage, guy got 1 job, 2 job, 3 job, 4 job. Right? The more jobs you have, the more likelihood you are to profit from all 4. All right. But if the thing you're depending on is something that needs to be planted, that's where it starts getting a little bit, profound. If what you profit from is something that's planted, if what you profit from is something that is sent across the sea, like a grain, cast your grains upon the sea. So if you're sending your grain upon the sea to be planted in a foreign land, then there must be fruit that comes from it. It's got to bear fruit. For the tree has to grow. And if we understand the biblical context of planting seed, we know that the seed has to be planted in good ground. It almost doesn't matter how good the seed is if it doesn't take root in good ground, right? So the ground has to be good. Otherwise, the seed won't grow. All right? So then the seed has to grow, and then it has to bring forth fruit. So if you plant a seed in the morning and enter into folly for the rest of the day, I worked a whole hour and a half planting seed. I'm tired. I'm going to make me a egg and cheese sandwich with a side of, a nice steak or something. I don't know. Whatever. And now you're going to rest for the rest of the afternoon, take a good nap. All that time, you could have actually been doing something else. Because it could be that the seed doesn't grow. Right? This is the problem with high definition. You watch TV shows and you can see folk got dandruff or something on their shirt, but they're too proud to wipe it off. Or maybe I'm so vain that I would do so, right? It goes both ways. Plant your seed in the morning and keep busy all afternoon. For you don't know if profit will come from one activity or the other. And conversely, you don't know if no profit would come from one or the other. Maybe both will bear fruit. Maybe both won't bear fruit. But the leaning of the statement is that both have the opportunity to bear fruit. So broaden your opportunities by staying active and busy. Light is sweet. How pleasant it is to see a new day dawning. People who live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. Verse 8, top of the screen. You're watching Light Source Victory Television Live. I'm your host, Pastor Jason McCauley. We're studying here in Ecclesiastes. We're in chapter 11, verse 8. When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. But let them also remember there will be many dark days. Everything still to come is what? Meaningless. And that's not meant to be depressing. It's meant to put perspective in the things that you do. Because remember the conclusion of the whole matter, which we're going to get to today as we finish this up in chapter 12. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Everything you've done here to date was meaningless and vexation of spirit. That is not to suggest that your life has been meaningless. That's not to suggest that all your undertakings were of no consequence. It's to suggest that in the things you do, there is no sustainability in terms of giving you the sustained peace that comes from a relationship with God. In all that you do, seek the Lord first. But that's not to say that you shouldn't shop. It's not to say that you shouldn't buy gifts for friends and family. It doesn't mean that you should not turn the other cheek, right? It doesn't mean you shouldn't go to work. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't fall in love. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have kids. It doesn't mean that there's not a time for war and that there's a time for peace. All of these things are still true, but there's nothing in them that provides you with that everlasting sustainability, right? I mean, we've got 10 chapters that we've gone over that make that very, very clear, right? Even the guy who has 100 children, but when he gets very old, there's none of his kids that will bury him, give him an honorable funeral, right? Talk about vexation and vanity of spirit. In the account that we read, it said that he would rather had been born dead than to suffer the grief of not one of his children being willing to bury him. All right. So he apparently knows the state of the relationship between him and his kids if he's so grief-stricken that he would rather have not been born. I mean, I want you to process having 100 children who you care about, but don't care about you. And here you are, old. The light in the eye is dimming. The days ahead are exceedingly short because you can see the finish line. And you know before the end of 2 weeks, you're going to get to the finish line. And all of your children have made it quite clear that when you die, they will not be there. Right? They were all young and little once and full of joy and brought you joy and happiness. You couldn't wait to go out and show your friends the new babies and they are on your little shoulders and you're riding them around like being a horsey for them and all these things. Then kids grow up, family dynamics happen. Life happens, right? When people live to be very old, let them rejoice in every day of life. But let them also remember there will be many dark days. Everything still to come is meaningless. It'll be just as meaningless coming as it has been going by. Young people, it's wonderful to be young. Enjoy every minute of it. Do everything you want to do. Take it all in. But remember, you must give an account to God for everything you do. See, this is a powerful thing that young people need to understand, realize, and embrace. Oh, yes, youth is wonderful. You can do all kinds of things when you're young. Oh, you've got your whole life ahead of you. And true. But it would do the young good to fully embrace and understand what the teacher, the king, is saying here in Ecclesiastes. His wisdom that he gained from the life experiences as he gave himself to know all the things that could be done under the sun. And young people want to experiment with everything. That's part of the problem with young people. Unfortunately, many of them experiment with things that have a consequence that is fatal. There are some things you can't recover from. Ingesting the wrong kind of chemical puts your brain on hold, and you're never quite the same afterwards. See, all these things that young people do, thinking that, oh, there's nothing down, no consequence. Lots of things happen to people because they was reckless when they were young. That's youth. One of my favorite things that young people did. Now, this is this is a child, a kid. He can't be no more than 3 or 4. It's one of my favorite mind time sucking videos on Facebook that you could watch in these reels or Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. They all have these things where you could sit there, and they're only a minute long, but 60 of those later is an hour. And before you know it, 2-3 hours are gone by you watching mindless nonsense, right? Because it makes no sense, but it's funny, it's entertaining, and it's a quick laugh and on and on. But one of my favorite of these is the kid that calls his dad, want him to show him something, so he jumps off the top step. Hilarious. He jumps off the top step. I think he might hit one step in between there and the bottom, and then he lands on the bottom. He said, "No, don't do that ever. Don't do that again. I thought you wanted to show me something." The kid's lucky he didn't die. He didn't know no better. He got a cape on and he can fly. He's going to show his dad he can fly. He jumps. It's hilarious. Hilarious. Right? Because the kid doesn't get hurt. There's another old saying or adage, God takes care of babies and fools. Right? Thank God he does. Otherwise, both would be in great danger and peril. Okay? Kids do these kinds of things. Unfortunately, sometimes the ending is quite tragic. I've had a friend of mine set his house on fire when he was a kid. He might be watching. He set his house on fire. It's funny to hear the story. You look back. I'm sure it wasn't funny at the time, and I'm sure the parents weren't too happy about it. But kids do things. Tragic. Sometimes they take vengeance out, wind up killing somebody. It was an accidental, intentional thing. They just weren't thinking, caught up in the moment, the heat of the emotion, and next thing you know, someone's dead. So some things you can't come back from. You just can't come back. That is why you have to remember that you give an account to God. See, if young people have the fear of God, then they will do that which is necessary, hopefully, to stay in check. I was talking to my wife earlier today, about what I thinking about in my mind. I run some ideas past her. Sometimes she looks at me like I'm absolutely crazy. She did that a lot this afternoon. Because sometimes I bounce ideas off of her before they're like fully baked. That's always a mistake. But this one, she didn't look at me like I was crazy about it. I won't tell you the one that she thought was crazy, because then I'd be talking about our business. But nonetheless, I thought about there's this whole thing about democracy. And democracy is in peril, and democracy is under attack. And, it's just, without getting all political about it. But then, Speaker Pelosi on her exit speech gave accolades to the press, and that she said that the press were the defenders of democracy. Now, in theory, the press is the fourth branch of government. It is there to help keep an independent eye on the goings on and to report about that. So to that degree, she would be correct if the press indeed did report accurately about what government does, as opposed to having been co-opted by government and become a voice for government, a propaganda arm of government. All right. But there are other parts that make that thing work. And it's under the First Amendment. See, freedom of the press is part of that. But there's also the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of religion. You see, religion in the Constitution, right? Religion is, and I understand what religion is man's attempt to appease God. On our program, we don't talk about a religion. We talk about a personal relationship with the Savior, Jesus. All right. But religion and the freedom to exercise, and the government shall not, cause and make religion and official religion. Religion in that context is the idea or notion that there is a superior force, a superior entity, being, call it whatever you want, to whom humanity must answer. Bigger than government, bigger than the people, bigger than systems. There's this big whatever that has overarching authority to all. And one day we have to give an account. With that in mind, we give people freedom to be self-governed as opposed to having a king, right? To be self-governed and to find their own government. And then there's a entity that reports on what this government that the people have elected have done, so that they can make decisions and that they can freely speak to one another about what's going on without fear of being canceled off the face of the earth, right? The originator of cancel culture was Cain. Just so we understand, cancel culture's not new. When I refer to it, I'm not talking about the latest iteration of cancel culture, which is sophomoric at best. I'm talking about old school cancel culture. Like, Cain was mad at Abel because God had favor over Abel's offering. So he canceled him. He neutralized him. He killed him, murdered him. His brother. When in theory, for the sake of Bible, there's 4 people that matter on earth, right? Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. So the first family had their firstborn child kill the secondborn child. So 1/4 of the most important people on the planet was dead at the hand of another quarter. And the 2 parents were on the outs and at odds with God because of their disobedience. That's where all this starts off at. So it's not like things are getting worse. Things have never gotten better. That's the issue. All right? If you take things in the full context, humanity is in a really bad space. Because when they were in a good space, they decided to be disobedient to God, to not keep God's will, to do exactly the opposite of what God had commanded. Do not eat of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, for in the day that you eat thereof, ye shall surely die. Right? And then enter in an agitator, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, right? And he possesses and takes control of the serpent and causes Eve to partake of the fruit. He tests her on whether or not she is aware of what the word says. And she tells the serpent that God has said that we could eat of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, but we must not eat of it, neither shall we touch it. Well, he didn't say anything about touching it, and God didn't tell her anything. He told Adam. The command was given to Adam, not to Eve. Eve partook of the fruit and nothing happened. That's not debatable. It's not my opinion. It's what the word says. All right. Then she gave to her husband, and he ate of the fruit, and the eyes of them both were open. You see, she desired to be wise, like Adam. Well, Adam had been around a little bit longer, so it would seem that he would be wiser because he had a little bit more time on his side. It's not to suggest that she wasn't wise in her own right, but for whatever reason, she was under the false impression that she was not as wise as Adam. The serpent tells her, God does know that in the day that ye eat thereof, ye shall be like gods, knowing good from evil. Well, the point of the fact is they didn't know evil. All they knew was good. What they discovered was evil. And biblically speaking, evil is to be outside of the will of God. You want to understand what the outside of the will of God is? Eat of the fruit. Be disobedient. And you'll see, you'll meet evil. Because that's evil. Doing what God has commanded you not to do. All right? So when you take away certain things, it waters the ground that feeds deceit, that feeds evil, that perpetuates the conditions for rebellion. All right? So if you take away God, then there's no one to whom anybody must give an account to, right? And if you take away, any freedom to speak about stuff, then you don't have people talking with one another about the things that they find odd. And if you take away a free press, then you are left with a government that is totally out of control and out of check. You see how that works? First, you have to eliminate God. So there's a full-scale, all-out attack to take God and neutralize him. Neutralize him, right? So the first attack on quote-unquote democracy would be silencing the religious voices that are in dissent of what the will of government wants. See how it works? So I would agree with Miss Nancy. The press are defenders of democracy, but so are your clerics in the land. Whatever their faith, they are also defenders of democracy. And the voice of the people who speak freely with the right to redress government are also the defenders of democracy. Because if democracy doesn't have people putting it in constant check, you have tyranny. That's what you have. You have rule by the wicked. That's what you have. So, it is the presence of the godly that act as a stop sign to the madness of the wicked racing around the city, racing around the country, driving down the highway at reckless speeds because they think that they can. There has to be a check, a South Pole, a North Pole, as I like to call it. People can go on and be lost. But when the day comes or the time comes that they wake up, how are they going to find the right way to get to where they should be without a road sign? All right. Now, those of you out there that walk by faith and not by sight, you are road signs. As the Bible alludes to, you may be the only Bible some folk ever read. Now, it's a saying. That's not in the Bible, but the Bible does allude to that. All right. You are the ambassadors of the righteousness of God wherever you go, in your goings and comings. That's why even the folk who are quote unquote unsaved, people of the world, people who have somewhat pushed away and rejected religion, have a modicum of respect for people who they consider to be the real deal. Because I'm telling you, when you get into a situation where you're looking for something that gives you a sense of what's real and what really matters, because you've tried everything else and you've gone after this and you've tried this and you've tried that and find that it's meaningless, empty, right? Void, vanity and vexation of spirit, right? All is meaningless, depending upon your Old English or New or modern English translation, right? Meaningless, empty. They leave you unfulfilled. I talked to, at this point of time, hundreds of people who do good, community activist type people who are always doing wonderful things in the community, only to have the candle of their light snuffed out by folk who ultimately take advantage of them. Because they're good, honest, decent people trying to make a difference, only to have their good, honest efforts exploited, or sometimes wind up being murdered by someone who thought of them as an easy mark, or take something that they had and they worked so dear to do, and some just meaningless and vexation spirit. See, all the good you do will not bring you fulfillment. The bad you do won't bring you fulfillment. The folly you engage with won't bring you fulfillment. Right? The relationships you have will not bring you fulfillment. Only what you do for the Lord. The sooner and the younger you understand that, the more meaningful your life will be, because the reasons that you undertake any of those things will be because you are in service to the one who actually matters. Chapter 12, verse 1, Ecclesiastes, as we finish this up. Don't let the excitement of youth cause you to forget your Creator. Honor Him in your youth before you grow old and say, life is not pleasant anymore. Remember Him before the light of the sun, noon, and stars is dim in your old eyes, and rain clouds continually darken your sky. Remember Him before your legs, the guards of your house, start to tremble, and before your shoulders, the strong men stoop. Remember Him before your teeth, your few remaining servants stop grinding, and before your eyes, the women looking through the windows see dimly. Remember Him before the doors to life's opportunity, plural, is closed, and the sound, verse 4, top of the screen, and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the birds, but then all their sounds will grow faint, right? You're young, you hear the birds chirp, you get up quick in the morning and you start your day. But as you grow older, you don't hear the birds, because your hearing starts to diminish, particularly if you wear those heavy headphones, destroying your eardrums at an early age, right? All right, your hearing grows dim, your eyes don't see and focus like they used to. You used to like looking at things, and now you can't hardly see things without a magnifying glass, right? You grow old. You had a mouth full of teeth and backup teeth after the teeth you have come out, and then finally the teeth don't work anymore. Then you don't have any more teeth. Trust me on that, I know. Right? Remember Him before you become fearful of falling and worrying about danger in the streets. Verse 5, top of the screen. All right. Brother Carl Hardrick. And it's unimaginable that he would be mugged in the city of Hartford. But it happened. Nick Carbone. Only someone with no mind at all would think of jumping Nick Carbone. But it happened. Right? When you are old, you're easy prey. Remember him before you become fearful of falling and worrying about danger in the streets, before your hair turns white like an almond tree in bloom, and you drag along without energy like a dying grasshopper, and the caperberry is no longer inspires sexual desire. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. You know, falling is real. I'm 63. I've seen people fall. And, I hold on to the railing when I come down the steps. I'm intentional on holding the railing because I've not fallen down the steps. I don't want to fall down the steps. I've stumbled and tripped going up the steps. Fortunately, I didn't fall back down the steps. But as you get older, if you fall, you could break bones much more easily than when you're young. And it's hard to recover, particularly if you are alone by yourself. Because you could fall and family might not come and visit you for a whole week. And you can't move. You can't drag yourself on the ground. It's real. It's real. There are people who were in good health, relatively speaking, until they fell down the steps into the basement and now they can't get up. And unfortunately, they expire in the basement. People find them when they do a Goodwill check, right? Because there aren't people that stop by and do a Goodwill check, right? These are things you need to duly consider. Because then in your youth, you meet he who matters most. Amen. You meet he who matters most. Remember him before you near the grave, your everlasting home, when the mourners will weep at your funeral. Yes, remember your Creator now while you are young, before the silver cord of life snaps and the gold bowl is broken. Don't wait until the water jar is smashed at the spring and the pulley is broken at the well. For then the dust will return to the earth and the spirit will return to God who gave it. A lot of people think that they'll get saved tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll get right with God. Right now I'm having too much fun. Well, tomorrow is not promised. Old age is not promised. It's appointed unto man once to die, after that the judgment. What are you doing with the most important question that you could deal with? And that's your eternal salvation. What are you doing with that idea or notion that just what if those church folk are right? What if I actually do need to get to know God better? When's the last time you went to church? When's the last time you picked up a Bible? Everything, verse 8, is meaningless, says the teacher. King James, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher. All is vanity, right? All is vanity and what? Vexation of spirit. Meaningless. Completely meaningless. Keep this in mind. The teacher was considered wise and taught the people everything he knew. He listened carefully to many proverbs, studying and classifying them. The teacher sought to find just and right words to express truths clearly. The words of the wise are like cattle prods, painful but helpful. Their collected sayings are like a nail-studded stick with which the shepherd drives the sheep. Pretty powerful. No one wants to hear the words of correction, right? Upon receipt, it means that you've done something wrong. The words of the wise are often condemning, and no one likes feeling condemned. No one wants to be convicted of anything, because to be convicted means to be brought into the reality or the light of the fact that you were not in a place you should be. Like convicted for taking something that didn't belong to you, or a crime, right? You're convicted. We find you guilty, right? Convicted. Your guilt is what people are dealing with. No one likes that feeling. So when the wise come and say the things they say, oftentimes it's perceived as hard to hear. People don't want to hear that. That's understandable. But the wise one listens to the words of wisdom. The teacher, the king, Solomon, he went and gave himself to know all these things so that you might learn what he taught the people. It's all right here. But my child, let me give you some further advice. Verse 12, the king speaking. Be careful, for writing books is endless, and much study wears you out. That's the whole story. Here now is my final conclusion. Fear God and keep his commands, for this is everyone's duty. Verse 13, King James. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment, with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be bad. Amen. All these things will be brought into judgment. It won't make any difference, good or bad. Still need to be weighed out. So while you are young, set your sights on that which is good. Fear God, keep his commandments. If you're no longer young but old, well, you have breath. No time like the present to get right with God, right? As they say, get right with God. Get right with God. You can't impress other people and make it to heaven. You have to submit and come to him by faith. And he will grant you everlasting peace beyond your wildest imagination. And you will be able to come to a place where you will be able to say and testify, I have learned to be content in whatsoever state that I am in, because I know that I know that I know that I know that I know God will make a way out of no way, right? Amen. My friends, our time together has come to an end. May the good Lord keep you strong in the faith. Those of you that don't know Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, today is the day that you can make that change. Call on his name today. Allow him to be Lord of your life, and watch what he will do for you. Have a blessed rest of the day.